The shocking truth about Nicodemus, the man who secretly honored Jesus' body at midnight in the dead of night, when shadows stretch long and the world holds its breath, a scandalous secret lurks. Nicodemus, a figure whispered about in the corners of the marketplace, was no ordinary man. He was a member of the ruling council, yet beneath that righteous facade lay a pulse racing with tumultuous passion. This was a man who had risked everything for a cause that chilled the bones and fueled the fire of intrigue. When darkness fell, he stepped out, cloaked not just in his robes, but in a shroud of mystery. His journey began at the dimly lit tomb of Jesus, where the air was thick with sorrow and anticipation. The scent of spices filled his nostrils, clinging to his clothes as he approached the cold, stone crypt. Under the watchful gaze of the moon, he wielded a heavy torch, its flickering light revealing secrets long buried. What drove a man to this sacred place at such an hour? Compassion? Guilt? Or the desperate need to make amends? The townsfolk would never guess, they were too busy gossiping about the latest scandal brewing in their small community. Yet, within the heart of Nicodemus, turmoil churned. As he knelt to honor the lifeless body of Jesus, every heartbeat echoed with the weight of loss. Each whisper of the wind felt like a ghost of the past, urging him on. The shadows danced around him, entranced by his grief, while his hands trembled as he poured fragrant oil over the cold flesh. The moon seemed to hold its breath, unsure how to witness such raw emotion. Nicodemus was clinging to hope, drawing strength from a man who spoke love and truth. Yet, what if the townspeople were to discover this late-night pilgrimage? Anguish clawed at his chest. He could already hear their scornful gasps. Before we continue, I need to give you an important heads-up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But as Nicodemus stood there, a shiver raced through him. Something was stirring, far more powerful than he had anticipated. The ground seemed alive beneath him, quivering like a heart waking from slumber. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows, a silhouette against the ghostly light. Who was this intruder? Was it friend or foe? There was no time to ponder the implications, no chance to escape the encroaching storm of fate that was closing in around him. His throat tightened and his breath caught. How had he been discovered? Or worse, had he summoned the wrath of those who sought to keep the truth buried? With every ounce of courage rising within him, Nicodemus approached this new presence. The questions clawed at him, igniting a flicker of defiance. What awaited him? What were the boundaries of loyalty and betrayal? In a world where lives were changed in the blink of an eye, the answers loomed like a storm on the horizon, threatening to consume him whole. The figure stepped into the flickering light, and Nicodemus's heart sank. It was Joseph of Arimathea, another member of the council, a man equally known for his courage, yet burdened with the same trepidation that now gripped Nicodemus. Nicodemus, Joseph whispered, glancing around as if the shadows themselves were listening. What are you doing here? I came to pay my respects. The chief priests and Pharisees are blind to the truth. Nicodemus's voice trembled, blending anger and sorrow. We can't let them rewrite history. Joseph stepped closer, urgency in his eyes. They cannot know we are here. If they find out, the weight of that unspoken threat hung heavy in the air, thickening the atmosphere. With a shared nod, they both crouched over the lifeless body, an act of defiance hidden beneath the pale light of the moon. They had been followers under cover, but now, tethered by a shared goal, they found a flickering flame of camaraderie. The embalmer's spices pooled around Jesus, releasing a sweet yet bitter aroma that filled their nostrils, a reminder of the love and sacrifice that now lay before them. Did you hear the rumors? Joseph asked, his voice barely above a whisper as he glanced toward the entrance of the tomb. The shadows inched closer, encroaching on their fragile moment. Rumors? Nicodemus furrowed his brow, his senses sharpened. What do you mean? People are talking about the tomb, how he spoke of rising again. If word spreads, the council will not rest until they erase every trace of him. Fear twisted in Nicodemus's stomach. If they seek to bury his message, they would kill again. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. Not just a quiver, but a violent shake, sending loose stones tumbling from the entrance. The air shifted, charged with an energy that filled their lungs and ignited their hearts. The night transformed, shadows retreating and a blinding light illuminating the tomb. What is happening? Joseph shouted, staggering back. Before they could process the chaos, an ethereal figure stood before them, wreathed in light, the very essence of hope materializing before their eyes. Do not be afraid, the figure said, voice echoing with a blend of power and calm. Nicodemus could hardly breathe. What was this? Your faith has brought you here, and it shall not go unrewarded, the figure said. You must act, or the truth will be lost forever. What do you mean? Joseph stammered, eyes wide with disbelief. The figure pointed to the body, shrouded in the spices. He shall rise. But his message, the truth of love and unity, needs champions. Will you be those champions? Tension rippled through their hearts as they exchanged glances, uncertainty mingling with an unquenchable fire urging them on. Their chance for redemption rested precariously upon the blade of fate. Choose wisely, the figure warned, fading back into the shadows as quickly as it had appeared, leaving them gasping in the sudden silence. I can't, Nicodemus muttered, collapsing against the wall of the tomb, a storm of fear and responsibility battling within him. What could we possibly do? But before Joseph could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the night, growing louder, threatening to drown out their revelation. Quick, we need to hide. Joseph urged, urgency vibrating in his voice. They can't find us here. The moment hung heavy, fraught with tension. They had been given a choice, a weighty decision that could turn the tide of history. But would they seize the moment, or let fear dictate their future? As they scrambled into shadowy corners of the tomb, silence enveloped them once more, thick enough to choke on. Outside, the encroaching figures moved closer, looming like a storm ready to unleash its fury. What awaited them? Would they stand for truth when everything they had ever known was at stake? Theirs was only the beginning, a challenge poised to shatter the very foundations of their world. In that moment, Nicodemus knew one thing for sure: he would never be the same. The dawn was breaking, and with it, the potential for transformation. Would he welcome it, or succumb to the pull of darkness? As the tomb's heavy stone door creaked open, their hearts raced. The moment had come. The door swung open with a slow, grinding noise, echoing in the stillness like a funeral bell tolling in the distance. Light spilled into the tomb, casting elongated shadows that danced across the stone walls. Joseph and Nicodemus pressed back against the cold, hard surface, their hearts pounding like war drums in their chests. They held their breath, straining to make out the silhouettes approaching, the faint murmur of unfamiliar voices rising with each step. Look for witnesses, one of the figures barked, the authority in his voice forcing a chill through the bones of the two men. We cannot let this end here. Not after everything. He was crucified, but if he rises again, we have much to lose. What are they talking about? Nicodemus whispered, panic tightening around his throat. He could feel heat pooling in his chest, the fear surging unchecked. What will they do if they find us? Joseph's jaw tightened, eyes alight with a fierce determination. They will stop at nothing to destroy the truth. We must protect his message. As they huddled in the shadows, the first figure stepped forward into the light, revealing a familiar face: Caiaphas, the high priest, flanked by a handful of guards. Their menacing forms blocked the way out, a physical manifestation of the dread swirling in Nicodemus's mind. We need to gather the council, Caiaphas ordered, his gaze sweeping across the tomb with calculating eyes. They can't know about him rising. We have to squash any talk of miracles before it spreads. Nicodemus felt a cold sweat on his brow. This was a man with power, authority, and a resolve to dismantle any lingering hope. Every fiber of Nicodemus's being screamed to act, to instill a sense of justice, to claim the mantle of champion as the vision urged him. But fear had a way of curtailing courage. "Joseph," he hissed, his voice barely a whisper, "we can't just wait here. We must do something." Before Joseph could respond, the ground trembled again, a deep rumble that rattled the air and vibrated through their bones. The flickering torchlight wavered, casting shadows that morphed and twisted into unsettling shapes. It felt almost supernatural, as if the very world around them was reacting to their turmoil. Caiaphas turned sharply, his expression shifting from arrogance to confusion, then to a flicker of something darker, panic. Nicodemus's heart raced as he realized it wasn't fear of the tremors, it was fear of the potential for another miracle. "The tomb is powerful," Caiaphas muttered, his voice lowering, almost trembling. "We must leave suddenly." A loud crash echoed from outside, disrupting the stagnant air, and a booming voice filled the night. "Caiaphas! We know of your treachery. Step away from the tomb." Both men froze. The figure emerging from the shadows was unmistakable, Peter, along with other followers, staring defiantly, armed with nothing but their faith and determination. "Peter is here." Nicodemus grasped Joseph's arm tightly. A swell of emotions surged within him, a mix of dread and hope. They were no longer alone, allies had come to stand beside them, emboldened by their shared belief. "Stay hidden," Joseph hissed urgently. "We can't risk everything now." But the door loomed wide open, vulnerability exposed, and the air thick with impending doom. Caiaphas's cold eyes found the small band outside, and a fierce resolve hardened his features. "Seize them!" he shouted, and chaos erupted. In that instant, everything hung in the balance. The clash between faith and fear, risk and safety, loyalty and betrayal erupted around them. Would Nicodemus rise to the occasion and become the champion they needed, or would he falter under pressure, condemning the very message they had vowed to protect? As the figures surged forward, time seemed to freeze, suspended in an agonizing moment of choice. "Now!" Joseph urged. And as the chaos crashed in around them, Nicodemus's mind raced, heart pounding. A decision that could change everything lay just ahead. Would he step into the light, or retreat into the shadows? As he grappled with that question, the weight of the moment pressed down like the stone door itself, leaving him gasping for clarity as flashes of action ignited all around. The dawn approached, but so did the challenge of a lifetime. The air thickened with tension as dark figures lunged toward the entrance of the tomb. Nicodemus's breath caught in his throat, each heartbeat a drumbeat of alarm echoing in his ears. Would he dare to step into the fray or remain behind the stone wall, paralyzed by fear? The intensity of the moment made him dizzy, the world narrowing to this singular crisis. Without thinking, he flung himself forward just as shadows engulfed Peter and his companions. "Stop!" he shouted, the sound tearing from him like a desperate plea. He refused to watch the precious light extinguish. For the first time, he felt the weight of duty pushing him forward, propelling him into the unknown. "What are you doing?" Joseph hissed, reaching for him. But it was too late. Nicodemus was already emerging from darkness into glare, heart hammering. Caiaphas's eyes were alight with fury. "You traitorous fool, Nicodemus! You think you can protect them? They will destroy everything." The high priest pointed a finger, a venomous accusation. "I am here to defend the truth." Nicodemus shot back, his voice steady despite the storm raging within him. The confidence he tried to project was like glass crackling and precariously close to shattering. "You will regret this." Caiaphas bellowed as guards surged forward. "Stand firm!" Peter yelled, rallying his group. They formed a line, a brave wall of defiance against overwhelming odds. Each face, illuminated by torchlight, revealed unyielding determination, filled with hope against despair. The ground quaked once more, rattling their resolve, and an unsettling crack echoed through the tomb, a harbinger of something far beyond this skirmish. "We don't have time for this." Joseph called out, urgency etched across his forehead. We must leave. But the struggle pressed forward, each figure locked in a battle of belief. The guards advanced, blades glinting ominously. Nicodemus's chest tightened, his pulse thrumming. He grabbed a torch off the wall, the heat licking his skin, and raised it high. Leave him alone. He shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. The flames flickered, casting a fierce glow that illuminated the truth of his own resolve. The guards hesitated, faltering at the sight of undeniable courage. Fear had a way of crumbling the bravest soul. Do you dare oppose the high priest? Caiaphas sneered, veins bulging in his neck as he watched the faces of dissent. What if he rises? Nicodemus challenged, his words heavy with impending revelation. What if the rumors of resurrection are true? Confidence surged as he saw doubt flicker in Caiaphas's eyes. Would you rather silence the truth or embrace the miracle? A murmur cascaded through the crowd, followers glancing at each other, weighing their faith against the conviction that surged in the air like an electric current. Stand with us, Nicodemus. Peter called, hope brightened the darkness. Together, we can light the way. Just as it seemed they might hold off the attack, the tremors grew more violent, as if the earth itself protested against the injustice within the tomb. Dust rained from the ceiling, and a blinding flash illuminated the darkness at their backs, revealing a form emerging, a silhouette of purpose, glowing with ethereal light. Caiaphas recoiled, dread transforming his features. No, no. He gasped, eyes wide with disbelief. It's him. Nicodemus cried out, a shiver of awe dancing down his spine. It's happening. As the figure stepped fully into view, faces transformed with astonishment, a revelation too monumental to grasp, the essence of hope and dread intertwined. The very truth they sought to bury was now rising alongside him. Follow. The voice beckoned, resonating deep within their very souls. Now is the time to rise. The guards, paralyzed by the miracle before them, struggled to regain control, but momentum was shifting. Nicodemus could feel the tides of change roaring like a distant storm. The dawn of a new hope loomed too close to ignore. As chaos erupted, Nicodemus found his footing amidst the tremors of faith, but the battle was far from over, and the darkness cast by. Fear loomed larger than before. What path would he choose as the heavens aligned? In that pivotal moment, the voice thundered, but would it guide them toward salvation or into the jaws of destruction? With every breath, a new question unfolded. What awaited them in the light beyond? The atmosphere shifted to a fever pitch. The radiant figure, pulsing with an otherworldly glow, became a beacon in the darkness. Nicodemus felt the tug of something ancient and primal rising within him. Something more fierce than fear, stronger than doubt. Instinctively, he grasped Peter's arm, squeezing tight. It's him, isn't it? Nicodemus whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. Peter nodded, his expression a cocktail of astonishment and exhilaration. This changes everything. The guards hesitated, visibly shaken. Some lowered their weapons, faces contorted with uncertainty, others remained frozen, paralyzed by the impossible scene unfurling before them. The whispering crowd buzzed with a mix of disbelief and hope, like a guitar string vibrating on the brink of a triumphant chord. Step back, all of you. Caiaphas's voice boomed, slicing through the air like a blade. This is blasphemy. But as he shouted, the ground trembled again, stronger this time. The tomb shuddered as shadows appeared to stretch and warp. The light from the glowing figure seemed to pull at the very fabric of the place, almost demanding reverence. The walls pulsed with the heartbeat of something far greater than fear, something divine. We cannot let fear dictate our actions. Nicodemus roared, echoing a surge of defiance that ignited the air. This is a moment of truth. If we are to rise with him, we must choose belief over despair. New murmurs arose, hesitant but intertwining with a newfound resolve. A voice cried from the back, "He is right. This is our chance to stand with the truth." As if propelled by collective conviction, more members of the crowd stepped forward, their purpose clear, supporting Nicodemus and Peter in defiance to the clutches of Caiaphas. The weight of 1,000 names pressed against the walls of tradition and fear. No. Stand down. Caiaphas choked, fury etching deeper lines on his face. He gestured furiously at the advancing crowd, but his commands fell drowned beneath the chorus of determination swelling in the tomb. The guards, still wavering between duty and disbelief, felt themselves caught in a current swirling toward salvation. The figure glimmered brighter, a gentle smile bridging its face, a look of unconditional acceptance. Follow me to new life. Leave the darkness behind. You are not alone. As if fueled by the statement, an unstoppable force surged through. The crowd began to move, breaking through the barrier of fear. In that moment, Nicodemus realized they were no longer merely trying to survive. They were choosing to fight for something larger, something worth every sacrifice. Caiaphas, what will you do? Nicodemus said, staring down the high priest. Will you continue to spread the weight of fear, or will you join us? Caiaphas's eyes narrowed, anger flaring. You think this is victory? You are all fools, and fools often fall into traps of their own making. The tremors intensified further, shaking loose stones from the walls. Dust swirled wildly in the air. The silhouette, still glowing, beckoned with both hands. Now is the time, not for fear, but for faith. The voice resounded through the chamber, the very echoes urging them forward into the light. Just then, the sound of cracking stone broke through the mania, an ominous cracking noise spiraled through the darkness, and the tremors turned frantic like a heartbeat gone awry, threatening to swallow them whole. Nicodemus turned back to the figure. What happens next? Will we truly find our way? Light enveloped him, the answer racing up through him, mingling with the urgency of the moment. All around, voices began to rise in unity, bonding the scattered souls together as the chaos threatened to tear them apart. Follow. The figure called again, but the ground beneath them seemed to pulse with the fury of the buried. Your fate hangs in the balance. Choose now, for the end and the beginning weave together. What choice would they make? The air hung heavy with the weight of a decision, the darkness still clawing at their heels. Would they step forward into the promise of something greater? Or retreat into the shadows once more? As the rumbling escalated, it became clear, the next moments would decide everything. Would they embrace the light, or be consumed by the dark? The ground beneath their feet heaved violently, shaking every soul in that tomb. Stones cracked and fell, sending tremors through stomachs as fear mingled with excitement. The glowing figure now glowed brighter, illuminating the once dark corners of their hearts, urging them to choose. Forward. Now. Peter shouted, grabbing Nicodemus by the arm as they pushed into the moving crowd. It felt electric, an exhilarating leap towards something unknown but vitally alive. As they surged ahead, Caiaphas's shout soared through the chaos, desperation threading his voice. You fools, do you not see? You're being led to ruin. But the energy in the air was palpable now. Nicodemus could feel it vibrating against his skin, resonating with the choices being made all around them. The doubters, the fearful, they were starting to blink away the cobwebs. They stepped forward, moving as one, united against a common graveness that hung like a dark shroud. Fear has no hold here. Nicodemus cried, more to himself than the trembling crowd around him, yet the echo rallied some of them forward. But not everyone felt the same pull. Uncertainty held some back, and he could see it in their eyes, the glint of doubt splattering hope like rain on glass. Among them were faces he knew well, friends, neighbors, mothers, their resolve faltering as the earth continued to quiver and pulse beneath them. Don't give in. Nicodemus yelled. What do we fear more, this tumult or the despair we live in each day? At that, a flicker of recognition sparked. One frail woman stepped forward, tearing through the rust of her own hesitations, and then another. Hope began to blossom amid the chaos. They weren't alone. But then a deep rumble reverberated through the chamber. The walls moaned in protest, a sound each person felt deep in their bones. An ominous clarity settled over the crowd as they began to realize the weight of the ground they stood upon. "What is happening?" someone screamed, panic charging their voice. The guards had edged forward, some flexing their hands around their weapons, unsure whether to protect or surrender to rising belief. The figure, bathing in soft iridescence, intensified its luminance, almost as if wanting to shield them from the shattering world around them. "Do not fear. The truth leads to liberation, but it must come from within." The sides of the chamber began to fracture, and with each crack, reality threatened to split at the seams. It became harder to breathe, each exhale mixing desperation with determination. The choice was becoming clearer, a fork on a road either spiraling toward hope or sinking deeper into shadow. "Now!" shouted Peter, his voice cracking, almost like a lighthouse signaling the lost. "Believe. Stand with us." Swallowing as hard as he could, Nicodemus felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins, transforming fear into purpose. "Together, we lift the burden of darkness," he called, reaching out, a hand grasping toward both the light and the people he was leading. But as the crowd surged forward, the fissures widened, and the ground opened up a gaping maw threatening to swallow them whole. "Run!" Caiaphas yelled, panic spilling into his otherwise poised demeanor, echoing off the walls. "Fools, you'll perish." As limbs flailed and shouts echoed, it was uncertain who would make it across the threshold to the light, and who would be left behind in the purgatory of their fears. The truth lay ahead, yet danger lurked behind every step. Could they triumph over their deepest doubts, or would the chasm consume them all? The bated breath of 100 souls hung tight in the air, waiting for the inevitable choice, the moment they could seize their destiny, and just as they finally sprinted toward the flame-like light, it flickered for a brief heartbeat, vanishing. "What have we done?" Nicodemus whispered, heart racing, now feeling the weight of their actions crashing down around them. In that uncertain pause, a chilling sound met their ears, the unmistakable grind of stone against stone, growing louder and closer. What lay behind that shrouded light? A passing thought pricked at him, something haunting. Is it freedom we've sought, or our own undoing? Time was slipping away, and decisions made in haste could hold the fates of them all. The answer awaited in the darkness behind them. What would they discover in that terrible unknown? The darkness roared to life around them, wrapping cold tendrils around their hearts. Nicodemus squeezed his eyes shut, clutching Peter's arm tightly as if the grip could tether him to reality. The crack beneath their feet widened, sending a chilling wave of dread coursing through the assembled throng. The ethereal light that had beckoned them forward dimmed, a ghost of hope teasing their desires. With the sudden fray and chaos, panic erupted like a splash of cold water. Shouts filled the air, each voice drenching the other in fear. As if orchestrated by some unseen hand, those at the back surged toward the front, and Nicodemus felt the crush of bodies pressing in, all desperation and anxiety churning into one huge wave of uncertainty. "We can't stay here," someone screamed, draped in bewilderment as they scanned the trembling stone for potential escape. The glowing figure flickered, its form pulsing light and shadow, desperately trying to keep fear at bay. "Listen to the voice within. You are stronger than this darkness," it murmured, yet the calming words felt swallowed by the din. Nicodemus felt the weight of their fears like iron chains dragging down his spirit. Each heartbeat resounded louder than the last, roaring the truth. Were they truly free to choose? Or had they unwittingly courted their demise? His soul felt ripped between the blazing call of the light and the chill of the yawning chasm gaping beneath them. What's on the other side? Nicodemus thought, panic gnawing at him. They stumbled forward in a frantic dash when, in the din, Caiaphas' shrill voice sliced through. "Stop! Retreat!" His authority carried, a bitter command that made the crowd falter. "Let them go!" shouted Peter defiantly. "Their gift of freedom lies ahead." In that moment, something vital splintered in Nicodemus. Amid the chaos, he saw faces he loved, friends who carried burdens heavy as rocks, and felt their unwavering trust slipping like sand through his fingers. "Stand firm!" he yelled again, but this time he added, "It's time to face our fears. We can't turn back now." The air pulsed with an energy that ignited some spirits. A hushed whisper echoed through the crowd, a shared recognition, a connection on the edge of the precipice. A few began to slowly move forward, their knees trembling like leaves in the wind, but the darkness fought back. A tremendous crack split the chamber, and with it, the ground quaked violently. The crowd teetered, a sea of bodies shifting precariously. Stones crumbled and thundered, threatening to bury them beneath centuries of forgotten shadows. "Flee! Flee!" Caiaphas insisted, but a fissure had opened in his own resolve. What was left of authority now looked like frailty. With a final desperate lunge, Nicodemus could feel the summoning warmth of the figure ahead, while chaos bubbled wildly behind him. He vaults forward, adrenaline flooding his veins, and, with sudden clarity, whispered, "I choose to be free." He could no longer deny it. The truth surged like fire through his body. "Join me!" he shouted, turning back to the crowd brushed with urgency. But the moment sputtered, uncertainty crackling like dry leaves in the wind. The rumbling deepened. The air thickened, making their lungs ache with the weight of unmade decisions, and then, in the depth of uncertainty, the ground beneath him heaved violently. Just as Peter gripped his shoulder, an unsettling quiet crept in, silencing thoughts and breaths alike. It felt as if the very world paused, holding its breath with them, before the inevitable reckoning unleashed itself. "Keep moving!" Peter bellowed, but it was too late. The very walls of their souls began to close in on them, shadows clawing for escape, as the reality of their choices bore down with relentless ferocity. In that staggering moment, Nicodemus locked eyes with the glimmer of hope fading into darkness. And as the world lurched again, a thunderous roar echoed through the chamber, drowning out all reason and planting an unforgiving dread in their hearts. What if the truth isn't salvation? He thought, the question echoing painfully in his mind as they plunged forward into the unknown. What lay ahead? Would it be a light that saves or darkness that consumes? Shadows twisted around them like a living veil, swallowing Nicodemus and the crowd inching forward, their trust dangling on a thread. With each desperate step, the rumble beneath them grew more sinister, an ominous growl that clawed at their hearts. Voices melded into a cacophony, a mixture of panic and determination, each word lashing out like a whip against the oppressive air. "Stay together!" yelled Peter, his eyes wide with urgency. "We can't let fear tear us apart." But the ground pulsed angrily, as if it had a consciousness of its own. Another fissure opened wider, and the crowd gasped, fear erupting anew. A woman fell to her knees, her hands gripping the earth, as if by holding on she could escape the menace threatening to consume them. Nicodemus squeezed Peter's arm tighter, feeling the warmth of his friend seep into his skin. "If we make it out, we have to stick together." He looked out, scanning the sea of faces twisted in fear, desperation bubbling in their eyes. "We can't lose anyone now." The crackling light flickered. It danced tauntingly, drawing some toward it while others shrank back under the haunting shadows. An unsettling chill crept into Nicodemus' bones. The enticing figure now shimmered with muted colors, as if even it faltered in the face of building dread. Suddenly, a piercing scream sliced through the chaos. Every head turned as a young man tumbled into the crack, hands flailing in a desperate attempt to grab hold of anything solid. Time felt like molasses, dread coiled tight in Nicodemus' chest. "No!" he shouted, lunging forward instinctively, but Peter's hand held him back. "It's too late!" Peter cried, his voice laced with urgency as the crack widened and swallowed the man whole. A wave of horror swept through the crowd. Fear was a living thing now, pushing back against their will. Nicodemus felt it clawing at him, tearing at the fragile threads of resolve that had momentarily held strong. "We can still escape," he implored, voice shaking. "Stop!" Caiaphas shouted again, his command barely cutting through the rising chaos. "You'll only lead more to their doom." "Silence him!" someone shouted back. The tension was electric, crackling like thunder in the air. Instinctively, Nicodemus felt the weight of what had to be done, the division, the doubt, it all boiled down to a choice that could save them or destroy them. Face the darkness. Peter yelled, his voice rising into a fervent shout. Don't let it consume us. In that moment, Nicodemus felt a surge of clarity. They had the power, didn't they? Power to choose, to fight, not just for themselves but for each other. He turned to face the crowd, muscles tightening in conviction. We are more than our fears. He cried. We are the light in this darkness. But the darkness had claws. A deafening crack echoed, and the walls shook violently. The fissure yawned wider, as if the very earth sought to swallow them all. Nicodemus' heart raced, an organ pounding wildly against the avalanche of chaos. The crowd teetered on the precipice of panic. A flicker of light caught his eye. The figure was losing its brightness, flickering as if it were a candle in the wind. With renewed urgency, he shouted, We must believe. The light is real, and it can pierce this darkness. We have only to reach for it. As trembling hands reached out, a few began to step forward, the flicker of hope igniting a spark within them. Yet doubt lingered, dancing along the edges of their minds. Could they truly escape the depths? Just then, a shadow flickered past his vision, a face twisted, eyes wide with fear. No. We have to turn back. It was a voice he almost recognized, but before he could answer, the ground beneath them trembled again, splitting their focused eye. In that moment, a figure emerged from the shadows, one he had not expected. It was cloaked in mystery, silvery light emanating from it like a beacon cutting through the night. You must choose, it intoned, voice reverberating through their bones. Light or darkness? The path lies before you. The crowd stared, torn between instinct and longing, questions brewing like a storm. Could they seize this chance? Or would the darkness envelop them completely? What awaited beyond the shimmering silhouette, truth or destruction? The figure loomed, its shimmering form pulsating with an eerie glow that contrasted sharply against the darkness closing in. The air felt heavy, thick like molasses, and Nicodemus fought to draw a breath. He could feel the collective anxiety of the crowd, an electric tension buzzing like an impending storm. Choose. The figure commanded, the voice weaving into their minds. Light or darkness? One will guide you to salvation. The other, well, you can see its grip. Doubt crept in like a thief in the night. The faces around Nicodemus twisted with uncertainty, and he could behold their internal struggles play out in real time. Some were ready to leap for the flickering light, while others quaked with fear, clinging to the shadows that seemed to promise familiarity, however dangerous. What do we do? A young woman near Nicodemus cried, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. What if it leads us to more darkness? That's just fear talking. Nicodemus shouted back, but even he could hear the quiver in his voice. We must trust our instincts. The light, it calls to us. Beside him, Peter clenched his fists, face pale but resolute. We can't stay here. If we don't act, we'll be swallowed alive. Just as the tension reached a peak, the ground rumbled violently. A wave of dirt and rocks cascaded down from the jagged edges of the fissures, crashing onto the crowd like a tidal wave of despair. People stumbled, several toppling to the ground, their screams mingling with the thunderous noise. Hold on to one another. Caiaphas shouted, grabbing the arm of a frightened boy as the tremors continued to shake the very foundation on which they stood. Fear was palpable, it wrapped itself around them like a noose, but even amongst the chaos, the shimmering figure remained unchanged, steadfast, urging them forward. This way. Choose light. Choose unity. The darkness thrives on division. With agitation bubbling just beneath his skin, Nicodemus felt a spark ignite in his chest. Together. He cried out, his desperate plea cutting through the confusion. We must take a step toward the light together. A few faces turned toward him, their expressions flickering with resolve. Could they really move as one? Would the light protect them, or lead them astray? In that moment, a flash of insight burned in Nicodemus' mind. The shadows were feeding on their fears and doubts. He could almost see them, writhing and hissing, eager for capitulation. "Don't look back," he urged. "Let us sprint toward that light." The group surged forward, hands clasped together, a human chain pushing past the darkness. The ground roiled beneath them, violent and unyielding, but their belief began forming a small shield, a shielding aura around them. For a brief second, the air shifted, the figure's light brightened as if sensing their intention. Yet just as hope emerged, a voice, high and shrill, cut through the air. "It's a trap. The darkness never lets go." A moment of hesitation surged through the chain. Nicodemus felt the weight of that doubt wash over him, threatening to drown them all. "No!" he yelled, his heart racing. "This is our moment." The ground quaked violently again, as if in response to his fervent conviction. Rocks began to cascade around them, sharp and dangerous, but he held tight to those next to him. He felt the warmth of Peter's hands, grounding him, but there it was again, a shadow at the edge of his vision, a figure familiar yet twisted. "You don't know what you're fighting for," it wailed, its voice clawing at Nicodemus' reason. "Shut it out," he shouted, yet its pull was so strong. His heart raced as they approached the light, the figure growing more vivid with each frantic breath. What lay beyond was unknown, a promise or peril, salvation or doom. As they stumbled forward, a blinding flash erupted, leaving everything in doubt. Would they find their way through? Or would the darkness finally claim them all? The choice loomed before them, dark tendrils brushing at their ankles, whispering promises of safety in surrender. With encouragement dwindling, Nicodemus faced the light. Clenching his fists, feeling the hesitant heartbeat of the others echo against his own, was their resolve strong enough to pierce the veil of shadows? And would anyone else come back to warn them, or was it too late? The blinding light engulfed them, a swirling storm of hope and confusion. Nicodemus felt as if he was being pulled apart, threads of darkness and light fighting for dominance deep within him. His heart raced, the thundering beats matching the tremors of the ground beneath. Then, suddenly, the chaos ceased. A hush fell over the air, pressing in around them, and in that quiet, Nicodemus found clarity. The shadows retreated, lifting like mist before the dawn. "We cannot falter," he shouted, the rawness of his voice echoing through the newly settled silence. "We stand together. Strengthen one another." The crowd responded, a ripple of agreement coursing through them. Hands gripped tighter, hearts beat in unison, a collective pulse of defiance against the fear that had sought to bind them. "Onward!" Peter cried, his voice steady, cutting through the stillness. "The light awaits us." With renewed zeal, Nicodemus surged forward, feeling the weight of his decision lift. He glanced back, locking eyes with Caiaphas, now just a looming figure of authority struggling against the tide of faith. "Join us, Caiaphas," he called, the desperation in his voice palpable. "The truth can rise above fear." But Caiaphas stood rigid, his face twisted with confusion and determination, cycling between outrage and doubt. "You traitors do not understand the consequences." He waved his arms, desperation leaking into anger. But his voice grew muffled, overtaken by the rising energy of those who followed the light. As they pushed forward, glimmers of hope sparkled within the light like stars breaking free from the night. Faces flickered with newfound grace, reflecting strength against adversity. It was a scene stitched together by courage, belief, and a common desire to rise from the ashes of despair. "Together!" Nicodemus shouted again, the two words becoming a lifeline in this critical moment. Slowly, hesitantly, others began to break free from the hesitation that had kept them tethered to the shadows. A mother pulled her son closer, a friend reached out to another, fingers grasped in shared trust sparked flames of faith, then, with a burst of collective energy, they surged ahead. Light crashed around them, not blinding but warm, comforting. The air vibrated with potential, calling them forward into a new reality of awareness and unity. Suddenly, the ground beneath opened further, revealing a chasm filled with darkness. It loomed before them, but something stirred, something powerful was ahead, waiting to guide them. "Jump!" Nicodemus cried, his voice echoing like a rallying cry. "Into the light!" With heartbeats accelerating, the crowd leaped as one, pouring themselves forward into the dazzling brilliance. Each body vibrated with purpose, casting doubt aside. An eruption of bright energy enveloped them, lifting them as if those fears never existed. In that suspended moment of flight, memories flowed into Nicodemus' mind, the faces of the people who had driven him forward, moments of doubt turned into understanding, despair transformed into hope. With a final leap, they found themselves standing in a new realm, vibrant with possibility, surrounded by brilliant light. There were no shadows here, no whispers of despair, only the warmth of unity, acceptance, and an eternal bond forged in courage. Panting and stunned, they looked at one another, hearts still racing. Nicodemus felt tears prick his eyes as he exchanged glances with Peter, with Joseph, with everyone who had joined this fearless journey. "We did it!" he exclaimed, joy bursting forth alongside relief. "We rose!" The echoes of their triumph danced around them, settling into silence, and in that stillness, they could feel the heartbeat of their community thrumming anew, a community bound not by fear, but by their unyielding choice to embrace the truth together. In the bright expanse, the luminous figure appeared again, a radiant smile among them. "You have chosen correctly. Love and truth cannot be buried. They rise, always." And in the aftermath, Nicodemus knew his journey was just beginning. The whispers of hope would now ripple through every corner of their existence. Each day would cradle opportunities, every dawn would carry the promise of solidarity, and each night would no longer feel like defeat. With the shimmering light of truth guiding them, they stepped forward together, ready to face the new day fearless and united. As the dawn unfurled before them, the challenges would remain, but so too would the strength of their newfound faith. They had learned the power of choice, the necessity of courage, the love that bonds them all. They were different now, transformed by understanding and unity. This was the path ahead, a future brimming with hope, illuminated by the very light they had chosen. So, if you've made it this far and witnessed the rise of transformation, then don't let this moment fade. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and support our community. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. What did you think of their rise? And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this uplifting journey. You need to show your support, because together, we can continue this incredible adventure.